Okay, everyone. Again, Tim Goff here. We appreciate you being here. This is the sixth session of our webinar series, Prosper During the FedEx Transformation. Today, we're going to talk about the roadmap to world-class excellence. So the purpose of this webinar series is to have a conversation about the fact that our customer is going through a major transformation. And of course, that is going to impact us as contractors. And we spent the past 5 weeks, well, the first 4 weeks especially, describing that transformation from the FedEx side and what its impact is on us. And then what we started now with week 5, which was last we talked about leveraging quality principles and leadership during this time of transformation. And what I am trying to do is bring to you the expertise that I've been fortunate enough to build over 30 years in business, including Fortune 500 companies and private equity startups, to try to help us change our thinking. Okay, so the tendency of companies when they get under stress like this is to stick to the things that they know. And I'm telling you, it's not going to work. Every business study that I've read in preparation for this particular webinar series and my personal experience is that we have to transform our thinking in order to keep up with what's going on in our FedEx Ground marketplace. And we're going to change the title of week 12 of the webinar series to be Why Good Companies Go Bad. And it's going to be a much in-depth study on what are the enemies of your company during such times when your customer and the market itself is being revolutionized. Okay. And so I continue to challenge you to change the way you think. Today, we're going to talk about the roadmap to world class excellence. Now, you might say, well, I'm not trying to be world class, I'm just trying to survive. Well, I assure you, if you execute what we talked about last week and what we're going to talk about today, you will survive and prosper. 86% of companies that go out of business, it's a pretty significant percentage, they go out of business because of cash flow. And cash flow, of course, is a result of top line revenue and internal costs to execute on delivering that revenue. And at FedEx Ground, we don't have a whole lot of levers to adjust our top line revenue. We don't get that opportunity, but we do get paid every week. That's an extreme advantage. So then the way that we're going to be able to survive in this environment of flatline revenue is to, when I say flatline, I mean it's going to maybe keep pace with inflation, but you are not going to earn your way out of the challenges you're in. You have to understand that those days are gone. It's the end of April. We are not seeing an explosion in volume, just like I told you we would not. We're not going to see an explosion in volume in the fiscal year 2025. So you are not going to earn your way out of problems. The way you get better is to maximize your execution. And this is what we're trying to talk about, okay? And so today we're going to talk about world class excellence. I have focused on this for the past 25 years. I wrote this presentation in August of 2020 as I prepared to take over a global division in a Fortune 500 company. I am showing you the exact roadmap that I used, and we had world class results. So I'm not telling you something that doesn't work. I've used it in multiple companies. It always works. Okay. And so some of these things we might have to struggle a little bit to apply them directly to your business, but they all apply. So here we go. You've got the question bar at the bottom. Just click on the toolbar at the bottom. Just click on Q&A and send in your questions. Ricardo's collecting them. We'll have that conversation about questions at about 2:45 to 2:50, and then we're gonna talk about next week. All right. Poll questions are going to come out every few slides. Please participate in those. It helps us understand what's going on out there and how we might be able to better handle your particular needs. You know, we have a consulting service that is available. It's not a way to generate millions of dollars of revenue. It's an organized way for me to help you if you feel like I can. So all you have to do to access that support is to go to mygroundforce.com, click on consulting. Pretty easy, okay? And so, look, I'm one of you. I'm just trying to help us all get better. So let's jump off in the pool and get going. So, core values. This is who you want your organization to be. Now, remember this presentation last week and this week is aspirational. I am not suggesting that you should already have done all of this. It would be awesome if you had, because you would be outperforming. But these are things that you want to work towards if you don't already have them. In my employee handbook, you're going to see all of this. Okay. So we talk about it, we try to live it. It's not easy to do. Uh, Outperforming world class companies don't do things that are easy. One of the things I taught my kids, and I say to everyone, learn to do hard things. And what we're going through right now, it's a hard thing. Okay. So here we go. Core value number one is integrity. We talked about this last week when we talked about leadership. Look, it's extremely important. Now, and I'm not just talking about you as an AO. All these core values apply to you because you should be role modeling them, right? But what we're talking about is your organizational character. How does your organization look from the outside? How does it look to each other on the inside? Okay, and so you want to have an inside and outside reputation as a company of integrity. Okay, and I don't think I have to explain what that is, uh, but understand that it's really key to you being in a position where you can get to extreme performance. Look, when you work in a company where you can trust everything that anybody says to you and anything that the outside says to you, when you can have a place in an environment where it's honest and truthful all the time, that builds trust. And when you have trust in an organization, this is the number one component to being an outperforming company because it becomes a great place to work. People want to be there, they don't want to leave, they want to be successful to help each other. Okay, so integrity is rule number one. Number two is responsibility. Now, everybody in this company, in this industry already knows that, but it has to be a core value. People have to take responsibility for what they do. Okay, it's not somebody else's fault. It's your fault. You know, I've often said that I wish everyone in the country could go through 2 years in the military. And the reason I say that is because in boot camp, one of the things you learn is it's not all about you. Okay. And so this is one of the things you have to teach in your company because look, not everybody was raised like that. You have to define responsibility in your company and then make sure people are doing it. Right or wrong with accountability, responsibility is accountability. You know, once you learn in boot camp that you have to be responsible, then you also learn that you are accountable for all of your actions. Mama's not here anymore. It's up to you to be accountable. We're not listening to excuses. We're not looking for reasons. I don't want to hear, well, I just looked down at my phone for a minute to change the radio station on my phone, and then I hit that concrete barrier. That happened to my company. Okay, so how do you have people have to understand that when they do something like that, they affect the whole company, right? Safety scores are incredibly important, and that particular driver hammered our safety score. Okay, so that's a definition of accountability. By the way, he was no longer on the team, as you might imagine, but people have to understand that we don't want to be in a business where we create an environment where we fire people all the time. We want to coach them up so that we're all on the same level all the time. Then you have to have a core value of we will execute, right? We're going to get the job done no matter what the hell is going on. That's the attitude that you have to have, and you want that to be a part of everything that goes on in your company. We will execute. We will execute on operations. We will execute on all our administrative responsibilities. We will execute on maintenance. You have to have these high expectations. We will do what we say. This goes along with integrity. But look, it's really important that we do what we say we're going to do. If you're writing an RFI to become a line haul contractor, or if you're an existing line haul contractor, these are the core values you want to put in your RFI. You want to tell FedEx, we're going to execute and we're going to do what we say. And then, of course, you need to live it. But I'm telling you, if you do that, you will become a trusted partner, and it will reap rewards. Not in the short term. Look, there's not a whole lot of rewards available in the short term, okay? But make this who you are, what you aspire to be. You take care of your people. You need to let them know that we will take care of our own, whatever that means. Okay? And this is not always easy to do. What do you do when a truck breaks down 1,000 miles away from home? How do you take care of them as an example of this core value? Okay, so make sure that it's part of who you are. And then we will pursue excellence with a passion. Look, most of our country is not raised like that. Okay, no one comes to you and talks to you when you're a kid and then you become a teenager and you go become adulthood. Some go to college, some don't. Pursue excellence with a passion. But I can tell you, if you make that who you are, you will make a difference. You will walk into a room and people will say, hey, I would like to follow that guy. Okay, and this is what you're trying to do. And then you want your whole organization, everything about it, to be pursuing excellence with a passion. Okay, and look, all these are aspirational virtues of your company. You want people to want to be like that. And it's a really high bar. This is what we're trying to do. These are incredibly challenging times. Only the companies, some good companies go bad. Why is that? Because there's a lot of reasons for it. Look, if you implement these core values and you live to them, you're going to be a good company that stays good. Okay, I'm going to switch now, and we're going to go to standing objectives. Look, what are standing objectives? Standing objectives are all your people know what to do all the time because of these standing objectives. There's never a time in your company in which anybody who works in your company doesn't know what's expected of them. Because even if they go, let's say you're a driver and they don't have anything in the unassigned rotation that day, you can still live to these standing objectives. So we have to figure out how to make sure that our people are positively contributing to our company, even when you didn't tell them exactly what to do. This is who we are, this is how we behave. We have our core values, and we have these things we do all the time. Meet all customer requirements on time, every time, without error. Okay, and so honestly, in full disclosure, I use this because this is one of the expectations we had when I worked at Corning. And Corning was a Baldrige winner, which means they had the top quality performing business in the country. That's saying a lot, right? There's millions of companies in the country. Uh, Corning was outstanding in how they operated, right? And part of that is customer focus. And we just talked about that in our core values. And we've just talked about that last week, right? When we talked about quality principles. So meet your customer requirements on time, every time, without error. Look, I don't have to tell you, there's a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth out there right now. It's always there in the contractor base. It's only getting worse. And most of that is because of this mindset that FedEx is there to take care of you. And they are not. They don't even focus on you. And how do I know that? Because in 12 months, they cut $1 million out of my business and didn't even say thank you for playing. They don't care about you as an individual contractor. They only care about FedEx. And they need a network of contractors to be successful. But those contractors are going to have to do what FedEx needs them to do. And they are not asking you what that is on a general basis. And so wailing and gnashing of teeth and getting on Facebook and complaining about everything under the sun is a complete waste of time. Takes your focus on what you need to be focused on, which is working your company to get organized in a way that you can execute with world-class excellence. All that time you spend complaining to contractors and Facebook watchers and all that business, you could have spent on improving your business. Okay, so you have to transform your thinking. You can't think like you did before. I'm telling you, it's not going to work. I've been through it any number of times. Maybe you think I don't know what I'm talking about, but you need to trust me. You need to change the way you think. Achieve 97% on your quality KPIs. Okay. Now, I would wager that no one has quality KPIs in this business. I didn't put them in my FedEx business because I just never got there. Right. I needed to get there, but I didn't get there. And what does this mean? This is not service and availability. That's already being measured. This is what are your internal quality metrics, how you execute on your own internal processes. Okay, and I won't delve into that too deeply. If you want to know more about it, then let's talk. But this is extremely important. It might be that you have an internal target in maintenance and you're trying to hit that target. And so you have a regular program that's constantly looking at maintenance metrics so that you can focus your business on achieving that. Of course, then you have to have the data to execute on those metrics and you have to be able to measure that performance. But that's an example of having an internal KPI. And if you hit all your if you organize around KPIs and you hit those KPIs 97% of the time, you're going to be outperforming. Now, look, FedEx is giving us KPIs. You might not know that are on a quality basis. They want you to hit the targets that they've given us because that meets the requirements of their business. Okay, they have a supplier management program, which is improving, by the way. The metals program is a dramatic improvement over how they dealt with us in the past. I'm a believer in tiered supplier management, and that's what they have done. And then they have key performance indicators in each of those metal areas for us, but also for them. Okay, so KPIs are key to outstanding performance. Achieve 100% on your financial KPIs. Do you have financial KPIs? You should. I mean, you can't just manage your business and say, okay, well, I did well last week because I have money in my checking account. You should have already established, defined financial performance indicators, and that now you're executing your business in a way that you can measure yourself against those. And when you see a trend, you fix the trend. Do you stay? Do you keep doing what you're doing? It's called start, stop, or continue. So you have to analyze those KPIs. Look, we're going to spend time on financial metrics or general KPIs coming up, and we're going to talk in depth about those that you need to look at and how to look at them, and then how to take that data and make decisions off of that. And then we're going to spend a whole session on the science of decision making. So I'm really trying to help you understand what the plan ought to be and then how to execute to the plan. And having key performance indicators for finances is a really important part of being successful. You don't just back your way into a profit margin. You predict your profit margin when you start your fiscal year, and then you do what you have to do to execute against that. If you're not doing that, that's not a world class. You're not operating with a focus on being world class. Okay, I mean that's how business operate. FedEx tells the street every quarter what their profit margin is going to be in the next few quarters, next year, next 3 years, because you have to be organized around that. That means you have command of the data, that you understand how your company operates, you're measuring it, and then you can set the key performance indicators for your financial targets. You have to do that to be successful. And if you hadn't been doing it, I understand. What I'm trying to do is help you do it going forward. Okay, another standing objective. Again, this applies to every employee in your company. Every employee in your company should have standing objectives. We talked last week about having performance objectives for all your employees. Well, those would be job specific performance objectives. What we're talking about today is having 5 standing objectives that apply to all your employees all the time. And they should all have these. Every one of my employees had specific standing objectives. Okay, so actively participate in continuous improvement initiatives means if you decide to come up with an improvement initiative on how to reduce idle time in a way that all your drivers could participate and be successful, and you bring 3 drivers in with your maintenance guy and your operations guy, and you work together to form a continuous improvement committee to reduce idle time. Because look, idle time is killing you on the fuel side. Potentially, look, I'm using hypothetical examples, but this is a way that you could implement that, and it would be up to every employee that's asked to participate in that initiative to participate. A driver should not say, well, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, so again, that's an example. And cultivate excellent relationships with all internal and external customers. Now, I know all you guys are laughing out there saying, wow, that would be very difficult to do. Some of these drivers are pretty prickly, and they sure as hell are. I absolutely understand that. I had a bunch of them working for me. Okay, but I've told you in past weeks that I had some basic expectations, and one of those is uh, as an ambassador of my company, you never get into a confrontation with your customers' employees. And if you did, you got terminated. And the reason for that is customer satisfaction is number one on my quality principles. And amongst the standing objectives, it's cultivating excellent relationships. And you don't do that by confronting FedEx. But I tell you how you can work on your relationship with FedEx is when you do have issues, you take prompt and decisive action. And then you tell them what you're doing. One of the things I encourage my clients to do is communicate with FedEx by email because they're an incredibly email centric company. But the advantage of you communicating by email is you know exactly what you said and you know exactly what time you said it. This is very important in the event anything ever goes sideways. So develop the habit of being able to write clear and insightful emails to describe your situation that will help you with FedEx. But then create a program where up and down your entire chain of command, shall we say, people are engaging with FedEx at multiple levels. I had contacts in safety, in maintenance, in region engineering, at all the hubs, and on all the shifts. You instruct and train your managers and your drivers how to build relationships because that makes you more valuable to your customer, right? It's going to help you change the mindset of your drivers in a way that they understand their importance and how your company operates and that they will have a better relationship with FedEx. They can work on that even if they didn't get a run this morning on the unassigned rotation, right? They could do that. Maybe they take 5 minutes and ask the coordinator, hey, can you want to have a cup of coffee? I just want to talk. Or maybe they build a relationship with the line haul manager on that shift. Or maybe they build a relationship with the admin in that hub. Uh, these are things that work, folks. I'm telling you right now, it works. And all your managers and you yourself should have communicating with FedEx on a regular basis as a top performance objective. You heard Alex Froome say in week 2 that he has a program where he regularly calls and discusses business with all his senior managers and all the locations. I was in 9 locations and I knew all those senior managers and their employees at the line haul management level, and I spoke with them all the time about anything. Maybe it's Josh in Nashville who was a college baseball player and loves baseball. Well, I knew that, okay, and I had those kind of conversations, and that relationship was valuable to me in many different ways over the course of time. So make this a standing objective. All right, moving on then, we're going to go to game tackling. So what is game tackling? Anybody that plays sports or watches football, one of the key performance indicators for defensive players is everybody hit the guy with the ball as many times as you can with as many people as you can at the same time. Game tackling is essentially let's work together as a team to accomplish a particular objective. In that case, it's getting the ball carrier on the ground, and we use as many people as we can to do that. Okay? So here we go. What is game tackling as it applies to world-class performance? Okay, create an organization, your company, that's company-centered, customer-focused. We're all working together. We're all spending the time and building the relationships internally with the focus on being focused on your customer. Okay? Next, implement high-performance teams. This really works. It's a little bit harder in the FedEx world because, frankly, sometimes you struggle with truck drivers wanting to do these kinds of things. It is possible to do it. I never put a high focus on it with my drivers, but I did work on this with my internal teams. I had my own shop in Birmingham. We had some high performance focus there, as well as my back office folks. Now, in full honesty, as I've said to you before, I had a pretty significant back office team. And then in 2022, when I implemented the mygroundforce software, I let them all go. Okay, now I took care of them. They got great layoff packages. They still had health care for a while. However, I had to reduce the internal cost. And in my case, the software saved me $250,000 a year. I replaced 6 people with one who was a software expert, McLeod Express software expert, and ran my entire company with no admins and no spreadsheets. So that can be done. That was an example of changing some things around and turning it into a high performance team. Emphasize and reward that team performance, right? If you can, and we can talk about, I don't want to do it here. It's not enough time. But if you want to implement this kind of thing, let me know, and we can put it together, put a plan together for you. But once you implement high performance teams, then you want to reward team performance. And look, I've done this many times. I've done this in the U.S. I've done it in multiple industries. I've done it internationally. This absolutely works. It absolutely works. And if you reward team performance for hitting those goals, you'll be amazed at what people will do if you get the right folks together. Continuing on gang tackling, develop cross functionality. What is that? It means a driver can drive a stick and an automatic. There was nothing more frustrating to me than a driver who says, well, I can't drive that truck, it's a stick. Now, I know how they got there, I understand all that, but it was a limitation on my company. It was a constraint. There's books out there on how to remove constraints, right? And one of the things it will say is develop cross functionality. That means all your employees can do all the jobs. All your maintenance techs can work on all your trucks, not just Volvo or not just Freightliner. I mean, they can run the computer on all your trucks. They know all the software. Those are examples of developing cross functionality. Then we talk about cross pollination. What is that? Cross pollination is when you take a driver and you let him be business contact or operations manager for the night, so he can see all the incoming rounds that a typical manager has to manage, and let him do that for a week. Obviously, you pay him, it costs you a little money. But what happens is that guy goes back into the operations team as a driver, and he's telling all these other guys about, you know, what goes on during a normal shift, and that he's the typical driver is looking at that problem through a straw. And so all these things can help you see what's going on better. Put a driver in with maintenance every week and let him see how drivers screw up trucks and how you get. I don't know how many mud flaps I replace. I know you guys struggle with mud flaps as well. It's just crazy. Develop, maintain, and utilize best practices. And look, you might develop a best practice that you think is the best practice, or you can work with somebody like me and I can help you with some best practices that we already have. But at any rate, you need to develop them. Sorry, my nose is itching from this medicine. I apologize. Develop, maintain, and utilize these practices as a way to get everybody working together. Okay, there is only one way we do this. There's only one way we do hours of service, and we want everybody to do it and everybody participate because it's a key performance indicator for our company. You make an hours of service mistake and you don't catch it as a manager, well, you're going to hear about it later on. It could affect your safety score. So take all these things you're responsible for and develop an internal best practice and implement it and get everybody involved in it. Continue with gang tackling, implement group accountability. Okay, so there are a lot of ways to do that. I want to dive into it too deeply. Mostly it's going to be built around building team performance. But what people need to understand, for instance, is if they do not operate safely and they do something stupid and have an accident, that affects everybody in the company. Everybody in the company. And typically what you will find is that if you talk about these gang tackling concepts, you will begin to see the 90 or 95% of your employees who grasp it, and you'll see the 5 or 10% that don't. Well, you know what you need to do with that, right? You need a team of folks who are able to execute these ideas together. Ingrain cost awareness. Help drivers understand how much it costs if they don't buy fuel according to your fuel policy. Look, I had a written fuel policy that all my drivers had that they all had to sign, and it essentially says you have to buy fuel from the list of stations that we have given you. I've talked about that in the past. And I said, you get one chance to do it wrong. After chance number two, I'm going to start taking the difference on what you spent of my money on fuel. I'm going to take it out of your pay. That's ingraining cost awareness. And what I saw is I was able to get fuel purchase behavior to 100%. In other words, 100% of fuel was bought at wholesale price. And that's the expectation you should have. That's ingraining. One example, you should ingrain the cost awareness around mud flaps as well. It took me a while to get that one there, but we finally got it there. So that's an example of ingraining cost awareness. And then forge stronger relationships with our internal stakeholders. That means work harder on being a better team. You know, you'll hear, one of the, well, for instance, around National Truck Driver Day in September, okay, work hard on that. Show that you're developing in stronger relationships with your internal stakeholders. There's other things that you can do. Once again, I'm going to brag on Slicker Trucking. On June 2nd, Slicker Trucking is having a vendor expo, if you will. They're going to bring they're having it, it's an annual meeting. They bring all their drivers together, and they've got a lot of drivers because they run a big P&D operation as well. And they talk to them about their company. What's the annual report on their company, what they're trying to do. I mean, this is big company stuff. And they're going to have the vendors all there for us to talk to their employees face to face. Okay, so this is an example of forging stronger relationships with internal stakeholders. Now, I never had that conversation with Slicker Trucking. They're focused on world-class excellence without maybe even understanding that's what they're doing. They have some outstanding business practices. I'm telling you, I'm very impressed with Slicker Trucking. I'm excited that they're one of my customers. That's how I met them. But they set the bar on doing these kinds of things. Okay, training. Nobody thinks about training the right way all the time. I remember I was in a big company. We started doing all those layoffs that I mentioned, and their idea was to cut training dollars. And I said, hang on, what we should be doing is increasing training budgets because we're trying to, the more money we invest in cross functionality and cross pollination, the stronger our company is going to be with fewer people. Okay, so that's an example of emphasizing training. But training is not watching a podcast. Okay, training is, for instance, the Smith System training program. When you just train somebody by having them watch a podcast, that's called transfer of knowledge. And the effect of that knowledge is only related to that individual's ability to retain that knowledge. How well did he understand it, and how well is he retaining it? Don't focus on necessarily delivering training information, but focus on developing competency. What does that mean? That means, does the guy have the ability to deliver on the training expectations when he completes the training? Is he a revenue generating resource? So we're using Smith System as an example. You go through in-depth video training, testing, oral instruction, and then demonstration and mastery of those competencies in an actual vehicle. And once you have the competency, then you're certified. Then you have to maintain that certification. Okay. Next thing we do is we emphasize professional development plans. That would be specific to your organization based on a particular competency, right? Maintenance guy, an operations manager, a driver, focusing on helping them get better, right? This is our objective, right? I used to try to boil all this down for my team and say, today we're going to go 1-0. We just have to win today. Well, we're about winning tomorrow. Now, the management team's always about winning tomorrow and all the other days. but your employees need to be worried about today. I'm going to come to work and I'm going to be excellent today. And when I come back tomorrow, I won yesterday. I went 1-0. When I come back tomorrow, I'm going to be better than I was. And this professional development plan helps them know how to do that. Establish skill level certifications. We can spend some more time on that, and offline if you want to do that. But essentially, it's establishing ways, and some of you guys do this from a payroll perspective. Driver level 1, driver level 2, driver level 3, and it's the combination of skills and performance. Require annual recertification. What this means is that folks are certified in certain skills that you have to get recertified the next year, right? For instance, Smith system lasts for 2 years. You have to get recertified in that. But what this does is it doesn't mean that once you've got it, you're good forever. Like when I was a Navy pilot, every year, I don't care how many hours you had, how many combat missions you had, every year you had to requalify as a tactics certification, an aircraft certification, an instrument flight certification. Those are very demanding certifications. You had to complete those every year. And if you had a skill level certification expire, you had to go back through the training. Okay, so if you didn't fly enough hours at night, then you had to go back through some training missions in order to get recertified to fly missions at night. I mean, this is how world-class organizations operate. And you can't implement this kind of stuff if you don't have some automation help. There's too much to do to be a world-class organization. And so what happens, and I see it all the time, is folks get stuck. They're like, oh, well, I don't know what to do. I don't want to spend money on this because I'm trying to cut costs. They don't understand the concept of opportunity cost. But I don't have the time to implement all this without doing that, and they get caught. They get stuck. So we can talk offline on how to fix that. But this world-class program, if you focus on it, will keep you from doing it. A couple more things on training. You got to measure your training effectiveness. Look, if you put guys through the Smith system and your safety score goes up, something ain't right. What I saw when I put my folks through Smith system training is I went 18 months without a preventable accident. Boy, that looks good on your safety score, and I got a lot of opportunities as a result of that. The district that I was in the Olive Branch district. The safety guy said I had the best safety program in the whole district. Well, look, that's the kind of reputation you want to have, because at some point something might pop up, and you need those brownie points, right? You need those confidence points, and I did. I had to leverage that. So again, that's building relationships along the way. Measure your effectiveness. Focus on getting it better all the time, and it will pay off. Implement a sound, measurable OJT program. When you put a driver in a truck to train another driver, that's an OJT program. Are you measuring that? Do you have expectations of what that trainer is supposed to do? Do you? And I'm talking about measure it, not just what do you think. And do you, I kicked drivers out of my training program because they had a bad attitude. And the way the instructor knew what that was is I'd given them a rubric so that he knew how to measure it. Okay, these things work even in the FedEx ground world. I promise you, because I've done it. Establish and equip an in-house training lab. Now, we can't all afford driver simulators, but you can create an internal location in which it has the feeling of a training location. It's got screens, maybe big screens. It's got a computer there. It's got nice chairs. It's quiet. And it's a place where your trainers can take your trainees and focus on some video-based training that's available out there. It's extremely valuable. Don't just throw your required training over the wall. Maybe what you do is create a program where every month 5 drivers come in and go through their monthly training requirements with your safety person, with your operations person there. And you can have a coordinated conversation about how important safety is and why, and look at those videos together. These things can be done, but you have to plan for them. You cannot be reactive. Teach analytical troubleshooting and problem solving. What I have seen is very few people really understand the concept of, before you can solve a problem, you have to be able to define a problem. And in order to define a problem, You have to understand on what the expectation is. A problem is the delta between what was supposed to happen and what did happen. Well, had you already defined what was supposed to happen? If not, it's very difficult to measure the performance on a problem or a situation that you never defined the expectation in the first place. Analytical troubleshooting is extremely important. There's multiple levels. We have the ability to teach that if you want to go through it. Okay, we're going to go a little faster here. We're running out of time. Okay, some more quality objectives. Okay, what do we do on the for quality on the road to world-class excellence? And I'm just going to run through these. You nurture the concept that you can have productivity and quality at a reduced cost. Look, there's a lot in that statement, and I could probably teach 5 hours on this statement alone. But you need to understand the relationship between productivity and quality. We have a metric we use at mygroundforce that measures the productivity of your drivers and of your company. And it's really important that you understand what that is and how are you managing it? What's the trend? What do I want to start, stop, or continue? Okay, but you can't do any of that if you don't have a focus on getting command of the data and getting to the point that you can measure everything in your company. It's very easy to say, well, I don't have to do that. I know what I'm doing. But I told you before, there's not 1,700 ways to be good in this business, right? Why do good companies go bad? We're going to talk about that in session 12. But if they're doing all these things I'm teaching you, they will not be going bad. Our performance will justify reduced sample rates, right? This is exactly the quality objective that the FMCSA uses. I've used it my entire career, and this is exactly what a core business quality principle looks like. FedEx is getting brought in for inspection at a higher rate because our contractor base is severely underperforming in quality. There's no other way to say it. Okay, and we each have a responsibility to make a positive contribution to the FMCSA rate at FedEx because it helps us all. If we all focus on that, this is group accountability that we just talked about a few slides ago. If everybody would focus on managing their hours of service records, we would not all get brought in all the time. That's group accountability. FMCSA is holding us accountable. Okay, now we're going to bring some automation to the hours of service situation. We're going to make it a heck of a lot easier to manage that. That's coming very soon. But you can implement an internal program as well. So, but if you don't, that's not a world-class business practice, and therefore we're not able to execute on this. Publish a quality improvement plan with measurable objectives. Every year when I manage my organization, we developed a quality improvement plan that contained all the things that we were going to work on, how we were going to measure it, what that measurement was, and then every quarter we talked about it. And then we'd have an annual look back and a fiscal year or calendar, I should say, we did everything in calendar year, a calendar year look forward. Okay, this is what world-class companies do. Utilize quality audit results. Now, this is a little bit more difficult, but you have to have somebody who knows how to audit. Okay, and again, this is one of the things I can teach you if you want to use me as a consultant to kind of help things, because this is a specific skill, and I can teach you how to do that. But as an AO or as a quality manager, you probably know what all these are. You know what the hours of service objective is. You know what the internal financial KPIs are. You know what you're expecting of your drivers, and you can have these quality audit. You can kind of do a quality audit where you talk about these individual stakeholders and you say, well, look, here was the expectation, and here's where you are. Here's what we need to do to fix that. Okay, that's called a corrective action request. That's how you implement that. And there's a lot more to talk about there. There's whole books written on this, but the point is, this is a summary of how you can use quality audit results to improve your company. You're focused on all these objectives I keep talking about. Well, you measure them, then you review them, and then you talk about how you're going to get it where it needs to be, or you're going to focus on doing what you're already doing because you're at or above the expectation. You got to standardize your internal processes. This is incredibly important. First, you got to have internal processes. Do we ever complain about FedEx treating us differently at one hub versus another? So it's pretty clear they do not have this expectation of their employees. Now, that's unfortunate because it impacts us. But what we can do is have a standard process on how we deal with the fact that they're not standardized. Okay. I mean, so focus on that and focus on standardizing internal processes. I had all my processes written out, and that's how we standardize them. And then you can create an improvement team. We talked about this a little bit earlier, that's generated around a specific process. Okay, develop customer supplier partnerships. I use Southern Tire Mart for tires. I had an extremely close relationship with them. I visited their factory. I knew their guys. I took them out to lunch. I know the national sales manager that I dealt with. I had deep supplier customer relationships with a number of folks, and that helped me operate my company more effectively. Sometimes I'd get a little better help or a little faster help on a problem. I'd certainly get better coaching on what I might need to do in a particular situation. Remember what I just said. I got coaching from other people. One of the things you have to learn in any business is you don't know everything. I don't care what you think, you don't know everything. And the best place to figure out what to do is not Facebook. This is what I see all the time. Okay. You need to talk to people that know what they're doing, that can help you, give you quality advice in the shortest amount of time, and focus you in the right direction. And that's not Facebook. Okay. So build these relationships. It works. Solicit feedback from your customers and your suppliers. Have a regular meeting. We talked about what Alex Froome does and going to all his senior managers. He lives in Denver. He flies and goes to all those every quarter. And what he's doing is actively soliciting that feedback. I call them all the time and their employees to see how we were doing and how we could be better. And I use that information to get better. Dramatically improve our processes through diligent implementation of detailed action plans and performance metrics. So nothing is left to chance. If you're going to do something, you describe what you're going to do, you create the action plan, and you execute on that, and you learn how to make decisions, which we're going to talk about in a couple sessions. So communications, I'm going to go a little faster here. Again, Slicker Trucking is really good at this. Understand what are your communications requirements internally and externally, and establish a plan to communicate better. Have an organized way that you communicate with FedEx. For instance, I had a 1-800 number. All 9 locations of FedEx called the same number. I managed all 9 locations from one location with one operations manager who had a scenario book that told him what to do in all situations, and he was the primary point of contact for drivers and FedEx. We organized the way we communicated with FedEx, not only the method, but what we would say. I remember I was in the Navy and I was running maintenance in the squadron, which is a huge job, and we had a 1MC, which is a loudspeaker. And when I took the job, I knew the CEO was crazy about how people use that thing. So I actually wrote a process and gave my enlisted folks the words to use on any particular announcement. That's having a communications improvement plan. And it also shows you that what I've done over the course of my career did not require some sort of fancy software like we have now. We didn't have it then. We didn't even have computers. Okay, so you can focus on these world-class principles. Standardized reporting, this is it's a long conversation, but I can teach you how to do it. But standardize your reporting. Conduct an internal quality life survey. I never got a chance to do this. I did it anecdotally, but never measured it. Get a list of questions, and you're seeing it right now, right? FedEx has given us a facility survey, and we're giving them feedback. They're taking action on it, and they're improving things, and then they ask you again what to do. That is an example of a quality life survey. That is a world-class practice. So we're seeing, as I go through this roadmap to world-class excellence, you're seeing real-life examples of these principles in this presentation that I wrote 25 years ago. They're real. Okay, they work. You cannot dismiss them just because whatever internal reasons you might have. They work. You can use a web page to distribute real-time information to internal and external resources. Again, Slicker Trucking and Warrior are good examples. You can publish an email newsletter. I'm sure a lot of you guys are doing that. And pursue paperwork automation. Look, you have to do this, okay? I guarantee you, if you're not doing it, you're dragged down. And what I've heard people say is, oh, I can handle this myself. Your time is worth at least $100 an hour, probably more, if you're doing what you need to be doing as an AO of a line haul contractor. So you got to quit doing important but non urgent work. That's what Eisenhower would say, right? It's important, but it's not urgent. Okay. And that doesn't mean the CEO works on it. Okay. You need to minimize the ability or the requirement to do that in your company. You need to spend the fewest amount of paid hours of your whole company on important but not urgent actions as you possibly can. Okay, so questions. I'm going to see if we have any questions here. Okay, question. How do I keep more experienced employees engaged in training less experienced employees? So that's a great question. The second part of that question is, should I make this requirement part of my recruiting process? Okay, so this is incredibly important. And the thing you need to keep in mind is everybody's different. And some guys are really interested and understand the value of contributing their knowledge to other folks, and other people just want to be left alone. And it's going to take you building a stronger relationship with the individuals that you want to do things. So, for instance, I had a guy that worked for me who was an unbelievably talented truck driver, incredibly safe. He was 75 years old and he'd been in combat in Vietnam. He had been managers in big trucking companies, and now he just wanted to drive. I tried to get him to be one of my operations managers. He would have been amazing. But he was like, Tim, I just want to do a great job as a driver. I don't want to do that anymore. So you can face those kinds of things. But mostly the way you get that done is helping them understand the value that they bring to lesser experienced drivers as a whole. And you're probably going to have to compensate them for it. But for the most part, guys that have that kind of skill set are not necessarily motivated by another $10 an hour, or I mean $10 a week or $25 a week or whatever. I had guys that would train drivers for $25 a day because they liked doing it. And so I guess the way to do that is you need to spend some time with the guys that you think might add value. Describe that kind of value that you want to achieve, how you're going to recognize them and reward them for their contribution, how you're going to give credit to them. I used to do this when I would send emails to FedEx about certain accomplishments of my company. I would brag on specific employees and make sure they knew that. And so this is where some of these best practices that we've been talking about come into play on forging better relationships with internal stakeholders. And certainly as a part of your recruiting, you can do that, right? You're not going to recruit everybody, but you could have a situation in when you describe what you're looking for to your recruiters, you can use some of these best practices that are in this presentation that we just went through. You can use those as recruiting targets and turn our recruiting expectations and kind of turn that into a profile that you're looking for. Hopefully that helps. If you got more questions on that subject, we can talk about it. Give me or just send me an email at support@mygroundforce.com. You can always reach me there. Okay, question. How to balance transparency in sharing operational KPIs with employees without disclosing so much that might negatively impact their motivation regarding compensation? Yeah, boy, this is a tough one, right? This goes back to last week where we talked about embracing brutal optimism. Okay, and so this is a challenge. It's one of those things you have to work on, and you might want to have a set of KPIs that are employee facing and a set of KPIs that, well, I shouldn't say employee facing. I should say different categories of employees have access to different KPIs. So, for instance, in mygroundforce software, you have the ability to provide, for instance, your business contact. He could see operational metrics, but not financial metrics. Or you might create a set of financial metrics that's specific to a particular category of employee. We have that as well. And so That is how you would manage that. It takes a little more work on your side to get them set up, get command of the data, but then you have a set of KPIs that's category focused. So you talk to drivers about the cost of mud flaps every quarter, right? The average cost of fuel. How are they doing in buying gas? How are they doing on fuel mileage, right? But then you talk to operations managers. In our system, we have the ability to organize performance data by, for instance, domicile. Let's say you're running out of 5 different domiciles. Well, you can look at your performance in operations and financial metrics by domicile. So you might have an operations manager for each domicile, let's say. So now you have a whole set of key metrics at that domicile you can talk to that individual operations manager. And when you have command of the data, and we do for our customers, you can have conversations that makes you wear no clothes. I mean, you're going to know exactly what's going on. And now you can say, this is not to beat people in the head, but you can say, this is where we are, but hell, this is where we need to be. So how are we going to move these metrics to where we want to be? You can have those conversations about organizing a set of metrics specific to employee categories. Okay, now this other question here, disclosing metrics that might negatively impact their motivation regarding compensation. Look, one of the biggest challenges that you will face, let's say you decide to be a mygroundforce customer and you've got, I don't know, 10 employees or 30 employees, but you got some key contributors in there. And I've seen this my whole career, but we're talking today about FedEx Ground line haul contracting companies. Once people see the software, and this is an example, so I'm not talking about drivers here, I'm talking about your internal folks. Oftentimes, once folks see what the software can do, they become an obstacle to success because they can see where this is going, right? And so what you would do in that situation is you would talk to those employees in advance and try to assure them, look, we're not here to replace you. We're here to implement a solution that's going to make us better. Now, look, it could be 6 months from now, 12 months from now, you've gotten so good at your execution that you're able to reduce your internal headcount. And so this person that you said one thing to, you might have to change it later. Well, this happens in business. You're not lying. You're being honest at that time. And then you compensate that person accordingly whenever you let them go. You take care of them. We take care of our people is a core value. Okay. Every time I laid somebody off, I gave them a letter of recommendation and my phone number and encouraged them to have any potential employer to call me. And they did. And I gave them the most raving review they could ever have. Okay. So you have to think about these things in advance. You can't do them in 5 minutes, but you can't stop doing what you have to do to transition your company forward on this road to world-class excellence. Because the reason you do that is not to get somebody to give you a gold star, because you never get to the end of the road, right? It's the longest runway you'll ever take off from. But along the way, you get better and better and better, and you become a great place to work, even better place to work at a lower cost. You're able to detach the cost curve from the growth curve, okay? Here's your cost curve. Now it's kind of like this. It's parallel. But the harder you work on your execution, the more you can flatten that cost curve. And all that area under the growth curve is profit. Okay? That's how business works. You work your tail end off to get control of the cost curve so that as you add revenue, even if revenue is flat, you get more profit. And when you get more profit, you get more resilience. You can handle turmoil in the marketplace. What if you'd been doing this 2 years ago and now you encounter this FedEx turmoil? FedEx cut $1 million out of my company. I didn't go out of business because we were resilient. We had things in place. I'm not saying it didn't hurt and that we didn't struggle because of it. I'm not saying employees are not impacted, but they didn't put me out of business. Okay, so you had to plan for that. That was one of the risks we were trying to manage over the course of time. And so that's a way that you do that. Then the last question is, did you elect TSP provided base plates or FedEx provided base plates? Okay, well, that's a great question. It's not necessarily on the road to world-class excellence. I used my own base plates. It was just, I just didn't want to deal with that and all that stuff you have to go through with FedEx. I managed it myself. And then I was able to tie my base plates in with I did my own fuel tax. And so I was in charge of all my registrations. No one else was. It's all electronic in Georgia where I registered all my trucks. So, and if I needed to do something manually, there was the tag office 2 miles from my office in Georgia. And so it was very easy for me to manage it like that. I did all the IRP stuff myself. You can pay consultants to do it, but I wanted to do that myself. It's incredibly important part of your organization. So electronically every year, I would renew all my registrations. And if I got new trucks in or I took trucks out of the fleet, I knew how all that worked. I wanted to learn it because I felt like it was a key skill. Later on, I was able to teach my office manager how to do it. The one person that replaced 6, for instance, also ran all my registrations. That's why I did it. The way FedEx does it is they take it out of your settlement every couple of weeks for 2 consecutive weeks. I don't remember the month that they do that. So at any rate, that's what I did, and that's why. I don't know that there's a huge cost advantage. The difference in your IRP costs is not the fuel tax portion, it's the annual registration portion. Each state's going to have a different cost. And Georgia's a pretty low cost state when it comes to business, one of the lowest cost states in the country, and that's why I did it. FedEx uses Indiana, which a lot of people do, a lot of trucking companies do, because it's a low-cost state for the state portion of the registration. The annual fuel tax portion of your IRP is going to be the same no matter where you get your base plates. Okay, hopefully that was helpful today. And next week we're going to talk about another very important subject as we go on this road to world-class excellence. As we try to prosper during the FedEx transformation. Next week, we're going to learn how to use business metrics. So we've been spending a lot of time over the past 6 weeks talking about metrics. Next week, we're going to swim to the bottom of the pool. We're going to learn what metrics we have, what metrics you should have, how to measure them, and what to do with them. This is important stuff, right? All right, so next week, we look forward to hosting you back on our webinar series, Prosper During the FedEx Transformation, as we learn how to leverage key business metrics. Thanks for participating today. Thanks for showing up. Hope it helped you out.